best of the rest of the news, meet Jim Yong Kim, a Korean-born physician who's devoted his life to improving healthcare around the world. He was formerly the chair of the Department of Global Health and Social Medicine at Harvard Medical School and co-founder of the organization Partners in Health. Currently, Kim is the president of Dartmouth College, but he's about to get a major promotion. On Friday, Obama announced that Kim is President Obama's nominee to be the next head of the World Bank. So might the nomination of Kim, a man who's worked in medicine and not finance, mean a new direction for the World Bank? Deborah James joins me now. She's the Director of International Programs of the Washington, D.C.-based Center for Economic and Policy Research. Deborah, welcome.
Thank you so much.
So glad to have you here with us. First of all, does this nomination require some confirmation?
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't. Okay, that's good news.
Yes.
So, what's your read on this nomination?
It's actually very exciting. If you know the history of the World Bank, all of the past presidents have been U.S. nominations, and they have been several times in the past ex-secretaries of defense, such as Robert McNamara, and just recently Paul Wolfowitz, as well as most of our major banks are represented from J.P. Morgan, Chase, Goldman Sachs, and Bank of America. Ex-presidents of those banks have all been heads of the World Bank. So the idea of nominating somebody who actually has a history of working on the ground in countries like Rwanda and Haiti to actually deliver primary care to poor people instead of a history in banking and finance or making war is actually a substantial step forward. It's
a huge step forward, and I don't think most Americans realize why or what the World Bank is. I mean, they think of it as maybe some kind of super fed that regulates the world's money supply or something. It's got nothing to do with that.
No,
the World Bank was created to do some very egalitarian, very high-minded things. You want to tell us about that?
The idea, and if you look on the World Bank's website, it says, you know, united to end poverty or something along those lines. It gives loans to developing countries around the world. It's supposed to be working to end poverty and, you know, ostensibly to do things like reach the Millennium Development Goals. Unfortunately, during the early 80s, it was sort of taken over, like most of the world and our country certainly, by this Reaganite, Thatcherite, neoliberal Washington consensus model. And so from that time on, really, it engaged in giving loans to developing countries. Unfortunately, the loans were oftentimes siphoned off into gigantic infrastructure projects, a lot of times displacing peasants from their land or not delivering the service that they were intended to, sometimes with a lot of corruption involved, both on the side of the lender and the receiving country government. And now those countries are saddled with those debts that they still have to pay back after all these years. For example, even now, there is big opposition in countries like South Africa and Kosovo to gigantic coal-fired power plants that the World Bank is funding even today. So this is really an institution that needs a sea change. It needs to be much more focused on ensuring basic public health care, basic free education, ensuring clean water supply to the 800 million people around the world who don't even have access to clean drinking water, and hopefully the U.S. nominee or one of the two developing country candidates, we don't know who's going to be the president still, will be able to help, as well as that bottom-up pressure that's been happening from the impacted communities for so many decades who've been pushing for change.
So in the minute we have left, this is President Obama's nomination or nominee. There are two other nominees. How is the decision made?
So, yes, the decision is made by the 24 executive directors of the World Bank. So some countries like the U.S. have their own executive director representation. Many countries are in a group. And those directors will decide over the next month. They also have Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who is the current Nigerian finance minister. She is a past executive director of the World Bank and has a very long record on these issues, and also Jose Antonio Ocampo, who is a very well-known development economist and is the past finance minister of his country, Colombia. So we hope that the best candidate will win, and we're just really glad it's not going to be a banker anymore.
Yeah. Amen. Thanks so much for being with us tonight and for enlightening us. We'll keep an eye on this whole thing to see who fills this critical position overseeing the global economy. The fact that it may not be a bankster, though, should be ground for some optimism.